about somebody that feels slighted? Usually disappointment and anger. And you see, him being rejected by God, him being rejected by 2/3 of the angels, this created disappointment and anger in Lucifer. Disappointment and anger. Now, we'll look at one part of the verse here, the first part of verse 16. By the abundance of your trading, you became filled with what? Violence within. You see, he kept talking about how we did not deserve the place that God was giving us. And he kept talking about how they were slighted. And because these are his lies. He's the father of lies. And that this is wrong, and that's wrong, and this is wrong. And humanity does not deserve the place that God is giving them. And with that, he increases in anger every time he tells his story, and every time one of the angels rejects it, he gets filled with more and more anger. And then he is convinced. He reaches the place of being convinced that he's not going to be able to change God's mind. He's not going to get the majority of angels to side with him to, again, talk to God about this. It's just him and this third of the angels. It's down to them. And the only way to stop them from being slighted is to destroy humanity. There is no other option left to him in his mind. He has become filled with anger. He's become filled with violence on the inside. And that's when God says, and you sinned. You see, at that point, he decided, well, if God's going to go through with this and nobody else will join in with me, then we will destroy humanity. You see, at that point of decision was his sin. See, I've been in some services where the preacher basically left the idea that if you just even wanted to do something, you'd already sinned because Jesus said you've done it in your heart. Because you wanted to. That was a sin. Well, that's not what the Bible says. James chapter 1 says every person is tempted when they're drawn away by their own desires. Now, let me tell you something that happened yesterday, and it does not equate with Lucifer's fall. But, with Trail Life yesterday, the CO2 race, they also had a concession stand. And in the concession stand, they had 2 kinds of chocolate pie. See, I didn't know they was going to have that, and I actually had something earlier. To have 1 piece of pie is not a sin. And I didn't have 2 pieces of pie, but I did have something else that should have been my quota for the day. But I'm walking up toward the concession stand, and I see this piece of pie pass me. I think a person was holding it. But it looked good. And I thought, I want one of them. So I go up there and I find out, well, there's 2 kinds. So I asked somebody to describe them to me. They described them, and I thought, well, I don't know which one that was. So I got out of line, went in through the cafe, back into the kitchen, and said, I want to see the pies. And I looked, and, okay, this is the one. I said, now, what do you call this one? They told me what it was. I said, all right. So I went back out through the cafe, got back in line. And I'm standing, and when I'm coming out, somebody says, so you didn't get any pie? I said, I'm going to get pie. I was just back there to see which one I'm getting. I had to inspect it a little bit closer. But you see, the thing of it is, and I got up there, and I ordered it. I ate it. It was good. But you see, wanting to do something, I like chocolate pie. It's a desire. When the pie went by me, it moved from I like chocolate pie to I want that pie. Temptation has now arrived because I'm trying to watch some of this, and I want to watch it go in rather than out. And my first thought was, no, you've already had something. You shouldn't get a piece of pie. But as our minds are always very able to help us with things, my mind said, yes, but this is for Trail Life. It's a fundraiser. This is a good thing. Can somebody say amen? You know, I could have just gave them the money and not ate the pie. But that's wasteful. But anyway, but you see, it moves from a desire, I like chocolate pie, to I want some of that pie. I'm going to have some of that pie. And I got in line, I ordered the pie. I ate the pie. But you see, the thing of it is, just wanting the pie wasn't a sin. And I'm not even saying it was a sin anyway, but just... You don't know what all else I ate yesterday. The pie itself was not the problem. It was what all else I ate and then put the pie on top of it. But with that, you see, a lot of times people say, well, when Jesus said you did it in your heart, if you're wanting to do that, then that's you doing it in your heart. No, it's not. Wanting to do it is temptation. Wanting to do it is temptation. You see, when I was 6 years old, I smoked my first cigarette. I smoked till I was about 9. I don't think my mom and dad ever knew that, because it was when my dad ran the store out on the creek. People would give me money to go run in there and buy me a pack. I was an entrepreneur at 6. Give me some money. I'll go get you. And so they started paying me, so I would save up the money and buy me a pack and hide it around in a certain spot where it wouldn't rain on it. You don't want it to rain on your cigarettes. And then when I could know nobody was around, I'd go light up and smoke me a cigarette. I mean, I didn't smoke a pack a day or anything like that, but, you know, just some here and there. But you see, with that, when I was 6, I got offered my first drink of moonshine. Smoking and drinking. But here's what happened when I got offered my first drink of moonshine. It was a bunch of, it was mostly older men. I was in there. My dad was in there. And there was a whole bunch of men there, and they had it, and they were drinking it. And they were just passing it around. And it got to me. I was the next one in the circle. And the guy actually looked over at my dad. I looked at my dad. He nodded like that. And the guy handed it to me. And just flash went through my mind. I mean, I saw all kinds of stuff that had happened. And I thought about, you know, alcohol was around every time all this bad stuff happened. And so even though he's handing it to me like this, I shook my head and said no. I didn't want it. Now the one smoking looked cool. But I thought if I drink this, I'm going to get in a fight. You know, because one of the things I do at the store was on Saturday morning, you know, there was a little place to park there. People would get in fights out in front of my dad's store, and I'd go look for teeth the next morning. And found some. And, you know, after I found the first one, that's when I started looking. But, and there was other stuff that I saw. You know, I'll just very quickly, before I was 10 years old, I was from here to probably a little bit past the sanctuary doors there, from 3 different men getting jumped from behind and stabbed probably in excess of 15, 20 times. And I just saw a bunch of stuff. Alcohol was always around. And when I was handed that, I had no desire. I was not tempted. But I did want to look cool. See, everything doesn't tempt you. That's why the Bible talks about those things which so easily beset us. See, sometimes we're criticizing somebody else. Well, the reason that you're criticizing them is because maybe that's their thing that they have trouble with, but we got our own stuff we have trouble with. And so we shouldn't criticize them too much because we're dealing with our own temptations. But just wanting to do it isn't the sin. Wanting to do it is the temptation. Lucifer was wanting to remove man from his place. Him wanting to do that was not the sin. But when it reached the point that needs to happen, it has to happen. At that point, he sinned. His heart was filled with violence. He wanted to destroy man. He made that decision to destroy man. You see, now let's take it with us here. One time I was working at Dean Lumber, and I gave a guy back some wrong change, nickel, dime, quarter, something like that. I don't remember exactly. And when he gave it back, I said, "Oh, thanks." He said, "I don't want to take that." He said, "I can't steal nothing." And I'm thinking at first, well, maybe he's a religious person. And he said, "Oh, no. It's just I know if I take anything, I'll be the one that winds up in jail. Something bad will happen to me if I take anything." Now, I don't know where he got that idea, but he was the only reason he wasn't doing it was because he would get caught. You see, when a person has done it in their heart is when, if they could do it without consequence, they would do it. But they don't feel like they can do it without consequence, so they're not going to do it. It might be, I feel like slapping that person upside the head. You get cut off in traffic or something. I just feeling like it isn't the sin. But, if I wouldn't go to jail, if I wouldn't get in trouble, if it wouldn't be in the paper, if people wouldn't think bad about me, I'd go.